We continue now at the top of Daf Peichesam and Beis in Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 88b. On the previous summit, the Gemara said that when it comes to the big day kahuna, if they get dirty but at the level where they can just be washed with water, so then it's okay to wash them with soap or with detergent. Rashi here explains, Hugu l'mayim kolomar, means to say, Im haya giulan muad, if it just had a little bit of soiling, v'lo hiskikon ela l'chibos mayim, all you really need is water, so then mechabsim osan af b'neser v'ol, so then you're even allowed to wash them with natron or with soap. But as the Gemara now continues, Hugul and Neser v'ol, let's say it reaches the point where it needs to have that detergent, it needs to have that natron or that soap, af b'mayim ein mechabsim, so then you can't even wash it in water. V'yesh omrim, and some say ein mechabsim osan kolikar, you can't wash the big day kahuna at all. She'ein aniyos b'makam ashiris, and the reason for all of this is that we cannot act like we're in poverty in a situation of wealth. The Beis HaMikdash is considered to be a makam ashirus, and so therefore you should have new garments for the big day kahuna. Rashi explains, Hugul and Neser v'yol shenizgalu giol rav, if they're very dirty, shegiu lizakek lechibas Neser v'yol, you need to use detergent to wash it. Sula masakin lo klal, you can't fix them at all. Af b'mayim, even with water, means lav l'ribusu. This is not meant, it doesn't mean to be like a chiddush over here. It's not saying that if it gets very dirty, then even water is a problem. Ela l'meimer, the way what it means to say is the Neser v'yol de nakat lav le'inyan kibus nakat. When we're talking about Neser and all, we're not talking about what you're using to wash. We're talking about the level of how dirty it is. The point is, if it's forbidden to wash it, it's totally forbidden. Shari legamri, and if it's permitted to wash it, it's totally permitted to wash it. Again, we're just talking about the level of how dirty it is. It just means to say as follows, that when they get dirty, you can't wash them at all. If it reaches that point where detergent is necessary. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Me'il, the robe, this was the Me'il that was worn by the Kohen Gadol, Kulo shal Techelas haya, that was entirely made of Techelas, of blue wool. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, Vayasas Me'il ho'efod klil Techelas, it says in the Pasuk that it's made from Techelas. And Shulav, the bottom of that Me'il, at the bottom of the Me'il, it says there was Pamon, Verimon, there was pomegranates, and there was bells. So Kate said, how was that made? Maybe Techelas v'argamon v'tolas shani, he brought wool that was blue wool and purple wool and scarlet wool, shazurin, they were twisted together. V'yosin son kamin rimonim shelo pitzchu, and he fashioned them like pomegranates that have not opened, meaning not fully ripened, shelo pischu pian, that their mouths, so to speak, have not fully opened. Uchamin konoos shel kanasos, and like the konoos of the helmets, they would hang these konoos shebaroshe tinokos, on the heads of the tinokos of the children. They would wear these helmets and they would hang the konoos upon them. Umevi shivim ushnayim zogin, and they would bring 72 bells, shabohen shivim ushnayim invalin, and in them were 72 clappers, v'tola bohen, and they would hang them, they would suspend them at the bottom of the me'il, shloshim v'shisha betzad zeh, there were 36 on this side, ushloshim v'shisha mitzad zeh, and there were 36 on the other side of the garment. Rabbi Dosa omer mishum Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Dosa says in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, Shloshim v'shisha hayu, there were actually a total of 36, not a total of 72, and it was Shmona Esrei mitzad zeh, Shmona Esrei mitzad zeh, 18 on this side and 18 on the other side. Amar Rav Inyani bar Sasan, Rav Inyani bar Sasan says, and we'll take a look at the Shinui Nuscho, says Rav Anoni bar Sasan says, K'machlokas kan, kach machlokas b'maros nagoyim. This machlokas that we find over here, 72 versus 36, we find the same machlokas when it comes to the how many shades of Negoim, of Tzaras there are. The Tanan, as we learned in a Mishnah, Maros Negoim, the number of shades of Negoim, of leprosy. Rabbi Dosa ben Horkanis Omer, Rabbi Dosa ben Horkanis says, Lamed Vav, there were 36. Akavya ben Mahalala Omer, and Akavya ben Mahalala says, Shivim Ushnayim, there were 72. V'yam Rabbi Anani bar Sasan, Rabbi Anani bar Sasan says, Lama Nizmacha Parshas Karbonos, Le Parshas Big Day Kahuna, why is the Parsha of Karbonos near the Parsha of the garments of the Kahuna? Lomar Loch, it's to say to you, Ma Karbonos Mechaprin, just like Karbonos are an atonement, Af Big Day Kahuna Mechaprin, so too the Big Day Kahuna are an atonement. And what are the various atonements? Ksones, the tunic, Mechaperes al Shvichos Dam, that is a kapor, an atonement for murder. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, Vayishchetu Sir Izim, Vayitpelu es HaKutones Badam, it talks about the Kutones over there, and therefore that is a reference to Shvichas Dam, it's a reference to a kapor, an atonement for murder. And Mechnasayim, when it comes to the trousers, the pants, Mechaperes al Giloy Arayos, that's an atonement on Giloy Arayos, on illicit relations. Shenemar, as it says, V'yasol lehem Seivad L'chasos Besar Erva. It mentions Besar Erva, it mentions Arayos in the pasuk. And the Gemara continues mitznefes with regards to the mitznefes, which is worn on the head. Mechaperes al gasei haruach. That's an atonement for arrogance. Minayin. From where do we know that? Amar Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina says yavo davar shebegova, something which is worn high up, which is worn on the head. That should come via chaper al gova, and that should be an atonement for that which is high up, meaning that should be an atonement for arrogance. And avnate with regards to the avnate, the belt, mechaper al hirur halev. That's a kapara on thoughts of the heart, and the reason for that is heichad deise. That goes by where it's placed. It's placed near the heart. And choshen with regards to the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, mechaper al adinin. That is a kapara, that's an atonement in terms of dinim, in terms of laws. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk v'yasisa choshen mishpat. It says it's going to be a choshen mishpat. It says the word mishpat, and so it has to do with judgments. That's what it's a kapara for. And the idea is that it is an atonement for improper judgments. And the Gemara continues, ephod with regards to the ephod, mechaper al avodas kochavim. That is a kapara on avodas zara. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, ein ephod usrafim. If there's no ephod, srafim, the interpretation of the pasuk, Rashi explains, is without the ephod there is srafim, which refers to avodah zara. Therefore, the ephod essentially is a kapara on avodah zara. If there is an ephod, then there's no avodah zara, so to speak. Me'il, and with regards to the me'il, the robe, mechaper al lashon hara, that's a kapara on lashon hara. Minayin, from where do we know that? Amar Reb Chanina says yavo davar shebekol, something that makes noise, as we said above with the bells. That should come v'chaper al kol hara. That should be a kapara for the noise, for the bad noise, for lashon hara. V'tzitz, and with regards to the tzitz, the front plate of the Kohen Gadol, mechaper al azos ponim. That is a kapara on azos ponim, which is brazenness. And how do we know that? But tzitz ksiv, by the tzitz it's written v'hoya al meitzach Aaron. It says al meitzach Aaron. Uviazos ponim, and by brazenness ksiv, it's written in the pasuk. It says umeitzach isha zona hoyalach, and therefore that is a reference. It uses the word meitzach over there, and therefore it's a reference to Azuz Panim. And the Gemara continues, Ini, is this really the case? We have the following questions. V'yamar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, but Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said, Shnei devarim lo matzinu lahen kapara v'karbonos. There are two things, two sins where we don't find an atonement with karbonos. Umatzinu lo kapara mimakam acher, but we do find atonement with something else. V'yeluhen, and they are as follows. Shvichas damim v'lashon hara, murder and lashon hara. Shvichas damim me'egla arufa. The shvichas damim, that can be atoned through the process of the egla arufa. V'lashon hara mikatoris, and the lashon hara, the atonement comes from the incense that's burned by the Kohen Gadol in the Beis HaMikdash. The Tani Rav Chananya, because Rav Chananya taught, minayin lekatoris shemechaberes, from where do we know that the incense is a kapara? Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, vayiten es hakatoris vayechaper olam. It says that he placed the katoris, and it was a kapara for the people. And now that was referring to Korach, which is a reference to lashon hara. V'tani Devei Rabbi Yishmael, was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael, al ma katoris mechaperes. What is the katoris mechaperes for? Al lashon hara, it's mechaper, it's an atonement for lashon hara. Yavo davar shebechashoy, something that is hidden should come. V'yechaper al ma'isa chashoy, and that should be a kapara for something that is hidden, because when the Kohen Gadol would bring the katoris, that would be done. He would do it all alone, privately in the Beis HaMikdash, and so therefore, again, the katoris is a kapara for lashon hara. And the Gemara continues and asks the question, Kasha Lashon Hara, we have a contradiction within Lashon Hara. Is the kapar for Lashon Hara, is that from the ketoris, from the incense, or is that from the me'il? And Kasha Shvichas Damim, similarly, we have a question by Shvichas Damim, is the kapara from the process, from the procedure of the Egla Arufa, or is the kapara from the kesonas? And the Gemara says, Lo Kasha, it's not difficult. Hadi Yediya man kotle, hada lo Yediya man kotle. In one case, we're talking about a situation where it is known who is the person who committed the murder, and the idea over here is that the kesones is then mechaper on the tzibor, on the community, that they should not be punished. And Egla Arufa, of course, the entire procedure of Egla Arufa is talking about a situation where the victim is found, and we do not know who killed the person, and so that's where the atonement comes, through the Egla Arufa. But the Gemara continues and asks, Idi Adia man kotele, but if we know who committed the murder, and that's what we're saying is the kapara of the kesones, that it's mechaper for the tzibor, but if we know the murderer, so bar katalu, so he's somebody that should be put to death, and that should essentially be the kapara when he's put to death, when he's punished. And the Gemara answers for that, b'meizid v'lo asrubei. The case over here is that he killed on purpose, however, he was never warned, and therefore it's not possible to punish him in the sense of putting him to death, and so therefore the tzibor gets a kapara through the kesones. Rashi says that the individual, he will be punished with negoyim, he will be punished with afflictions. And the Gemara continues, v'lashon hara nami lo kasha. When it comes to lashon hara also, It's not difficult. Again, is the kapara for the lashon hara through the ketores, or is it through the me'il? And it's not difficult. Ha b'tzina, ha b'farhesi. In one case, we're talking about b'tzina when it's done privately, as we said, the ketores is done privately, and therefore it's a kapara on lashon hara, which is spoken privately. But b'farhesi, if it was done publicly, so then, as we said, the me'il makes noise with the bells, and that's a kapara for that. Hadron Allah hamizbeach mekadesh. We will return to you. Perek hamizbeach mekadesh. This is the end of the 9th perek of Meseches Zevachim. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe, and take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. And in the next video, we will begin the 10th perek of Meseches Zevachim on Daf Peites Amud Aleph.